just friends. We have a full house here tonight. I knew we would. I mean, it's Eunice. We all know, and we all envy Eunice, in envy in like the nice way. You know how sometimes envy's got a bad rep lately. Like, green with jealousy, envy. But you know the kind of envy when like you're young and there's like the cool older neighbor or something, they have like the best clothes, and you think they're so cool and you like want to be like them when you grow up. That's how I am with Eunice. I'm envious in that way, especially after I saw your website. So I want to find out, you guys know the drill. I've very strictly asked Eunice to please not pay any attention to the chat box. But if you have any questions for her, quirky questions, most welcome. And I'm not just saying that because I happen to see that Barbara's here with us tonight. Uh, we can always count on her for some really good ones. So quirky questions, welcome. I will send the chat to Eunice after the call. So if you have any messages or something you'd like Eunice to know, feel free to type it in there. And let's launch. Oh my gosh, you are very popular, Eunice. Okay, so what I want to find out about first, I can't miss the most important part. 10-year-old Eunice, can you please tell me about her, what she was thinking about the world, what she was doing, what she loved, and what she hated?
Oh, wow. Okay. 10. I'm thinking that was like fifth grade for me. I wanted to be Harriet the Spy. I wanted to be a spy, period. That was my favorite book, and I made a little spy agency with my best friend. And
Oh, I can
so we were
see
in
it
fifth
now.
grade.
Where were you living? Where, like,
This was in Scarborough, Ontario. It's a suburb of Toronto where I grew up. Um, and so it was like in the public schools there, although it was, let me think, fifth grade. Yeah, so I was in um, the city's gifted program by then. So it wasn't a school anywhere near where I lived. Like my parents had to drive me back and forth each way. Um, but my friend and I decided to create a detective agency called EAR, which stood for Eunice and Riva. And we would run this detective agency on recess and lunch. So we had, our school was overpopulated. So we had what we called portable classrooms on the outside. And they were basically just like, they looked like shipping containers, but on the inside was a classroom. And they
wow.
had these little wooden porches that you would go up. So we would stake out one of these porches in the back, and that was our office, right? So if anyone wanted to find something out about someone, like most of our business had to do with like, does so and so like me? Um,
I love
then
this. My heart is full, and we're only 4 minutes into this call. This is, I wish we had ear in our school. So wait, so did you charge? What was the,
I seem to remember we intended to charge at some point, like maybe like a nickel per case, but I don't remember ever making any money as a spy.
did you ever crack any cases?
No. But we'd get interesting information. I can't actually remember what, but we'd go back to our clients and be like, well, we saw Joe like writing in his notebook and it looked like it could have been your name. It's like,
Oh, I love this. Oh, I love this. This would be a great series. I could see this. Can you not imagine this being like the next
I
Disney series?
can.
Yeah.
But that was me, and at age 10, I was a total tomboy. Um, I think I was like getting in fights with boys at that point too. Uh, like fist fights during recess. And what else? Um, yeah, I loved reading. I loved dogs. I think that was pre being obsessed with theater. So it was like spying, dogs, and fighting boys.
So did you have brother? You don't have any sisters. I think we covered that. Did you have any
Right. I've got
brothers?
a brother. I've got a
Brother,
younger
old,
brother.
younger. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
so you were the oldest.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Yes, I was an oldest as well. I think it does matter. I mean, I know they have those things with oldest, middle, youngest, but I
I
think,
think it does too. I
yeah.
think it contributes to the sort of type A thing that's plagued me my whole life.
Well, I can challenge you on that because I had an epiphany today. It's funny you say that. On every single call, and you'll be the first call I haven't done this, I've apologized in one form or another because my problem is being too type A, taking too much on, hurting myself with it. And I always want to be like those balanced people. But I took too much on this week yet again, despite trying not to. And I did an amazing job. Like I did the impossible. Like I did it. I did a project that was like no physical way could it be done. I finished the last word about 4 seconds before I logged onto this call. I
Amazing. I love
and
that.
the buzz. So you know what I mean? It's like I sat here thinking, wow, really proud of myself. And I thought I shouldn't do this, shouldn't do this. Why not? Maybe
I
type
hear
A,
you.
there's a lot.
The buzz of getting it done,
Yeah.
despite impossible odds, is
Yes.
completely addictive, and it's why I have never changed.
Yeah. Like I don't want to not do that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we all know we should be those balanced people, but I'm sorry I see them and the thought is boring to me. Where it's, you know, what I did today, that
Yeah,
buzz, when you shock yourself, it's got to be you against you.
completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So we're agreeing on this call that type A is our superpower.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a good way to frame it.
Yes, I like that. That's the new crux of things. Okay. So as always, so I'm excited to get to your website and I mean your narration as well, and Juilliard, and your trillion awards, and the fact that like you're best friends with Paul Rubin, and the fact that everyone loves you, and the fact that you can twist your body in like a zillion different ways. I mean, and this is all me not knowing you. This is from you obviously doing your branding really, really well as well, which is important because I think you've got branding right when somebody that's never met you feels like they know you. Do you know what I mean? And it's all the good
Hmm.
stuff. But can you tell me along the path, we all don't live perfectly charmed lives 24 hours a day, and you don't become such a centered, rounded person as you are now. I will get to the how you launched into audiobooks and all that stuff later, but you don't become that person without overcoming things. So, was there a time in your life that you came up against a roadblock or had doubts or dark souls of the night? And how did you get to the other side of that?
Um, yes. So, I mean, there are several episodes in my life I can think of. One was while I was at Juilliard. I had a couple years of, a lot of internal wrestling with stuff, with dealing with um, stuff that emotional habits I had acquired in childhood that were so deeply rooted in me and were really counterproductive to being an actor. And
Wow.
then being in this sort of pressure cooker of a program where we're expected to like excavate the stuff and tear it out by the roots, and feeling like I don't know how to do that. I physically and mentally have no clue how to do that. Um, so
That's the
that
work of being an
was
actor, though. That's amazing that you went
totally,
through that path so young.
yeah. Well, um I went to Juilliard right after high school, so I was among the youngest in my
Yeah.
class. Because I had other classmates who were, transfer students from other colleges or even graduate students who had gotten a degree somewhere else. So it was really tough to be dealing with that, uh, I guess that depth of stuff at that age, like around 18 or
Wow.
19. Um, is that right? 17, 18, 19, something like that. And I remember going into this awful depression for, I would say, upwards of a year, and trying to go to class along with dealing with this depression that made
Because
me
type A,
not,
you show up
yeah,
and get it done.
well, yes,
Yeah,
yes. I didn't want to get kicked out,
yeah,
but it was all I could do to drag myself out of bed and get to class.
yeah.
And I would sit in the back and cry, honestly,
Really?
for a
In
lot of the time.
class? Did
Yeah, I mean,
did
not
any
not like
teachers, did anyone pull you up and say, "Are you okay?"
I
Or
think the faculty definitely knew I was having a hard time. But I wasn't like bawling. I was just sort of
yeah,
dripping. Um, so that went on for a while. And the other really tough thing about it was that it made me not want to be looked at, which as an actor is sort of problematic. Um, I remember sitting in my dressing room feeling like if someone opens that door and comes in and looks at me, I will scream and dive under the counter. Like it was that sort of,
yeah.
I can't, like I was raw. Um,
Did you have anyone to talk to? Did you have anyone that
yes,
you
I
could
had a
tell?
therapist who was fantastic, and Juilliard provided therapy to its students. It was like you had to show up and get it, if, of course, but it was free therapy for the students. And I went every week. Sometimes I tried to go more than once a week. Um, and that really helped. But it took a lot of time and a lot of examination um, to start to get out from under all that stuff. And I guess about halfway through it, I also got on antidepressants, which helped me a lot. Um, and I remember the day I felt that they were starting to work because my depression was physical as much as mental. Like I would feel this weight on me. I always described it as like walking at the bottom of the ocean, that kind of like, just this tons of pressure downwards.
And that's a
Um,
hard age anyway.
I
Without
know,
depression, it's a
I
hard
know.
age.
It was that physical downward pressure, the sort of iron bands around the chest, the feeling that the ceiling was like right here. And I remember being outside one day, um, and I guess the Prozac had kicked in or something, and I realized there was a sky over my head. And it was that sense of lifting and lightening
Yeah.
um, that was the first sort of step out of all of that crud I was dealing with.
Can I ask you a
Um,
question about
yeah.
that part?
Hmm.
I don't know where I got this idea, but I've got this idea that when people are depressed, it's like the world shrinks
Hmm.
into like just this. And so that the seeing the sky isn't opening up. Is that how it felt? I mean, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
asking because I've never
Yeah,
had it.
it really was. I mean, I'm a very visual person, so I remember when I would get up in the morning, it was like the day was like this long black tunnel. And at the very end of that tunnel was like this tiny little pinprick of light. And that was the next time I got to go to bed that night. And I
Oh,
had to go through this tunnel to get to that next spot of, oh, I can, whatever, I can rest, I can have like a tiny bit of relief. Um, and another image I had was sitting with a group of my classmates at a table in the cafeteria, and they were all talking and laughing. And, first of all, they're young people, they're also actors. And so they were like on all the time.
yeah.
And I was an introvert and I was depressed. And so I felt like, those heat sensing images where you see these vibrant colors for different
Yeah.
heat temperatures. So I was seeing like this rainbow around the table, and then there was me, and I was just like black. I was just like completely cold. So these were the kinds of things I was feeling. Um,
But then how did you
and
get out and do the hard excavating? I mean, were you not having to perform in front of people in class?
I
How did you
was,
do that in that
I
state?
was. I think I did a really bad job for like my whole second year. And I'm amazed they didn't kick me out, honestly. Or maybe they knew I was dealing with this and decided to give me a break. Um, I did the bare minimum of what I could. I think I did really substandard stuff. Um, but I do remember the project that I felt was like my stepping stone out of it, which was a scene from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and I got to play Martha, which I don't, you know, it's like
Yeah,
that's a fabulous role, and it's
yeah,
also a fabulous role if you have shit to work out,
yeah.
right? So that was maybe the only thing I did that year that I felt like was worth anything. Um, so, I was also using the acting and the acting training as a tool in some ways to help me deal with some of the stuff.
Was there a moment when you thought, oh, wow, I'm on the other side of this? Or was it so gradual with just a lot of lessons in between?
It was gradual, but it did seem to not disperse, but like I said, like that moment when I felt like I saw the sky again after a year or a year and a half, and then doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, that was another turning point right around the same time. And I got my first tattoo that summer after all of this went down and I was feeling better.
Did you
And
like it? Because I've only had one. I really want another one. That feeling was like weirdly a feeling of accomplishment. How'd you feel? It was like, I'm so cool. Did you did you like
yeah,
it? Are you
I
happy you
do.
got it?
I only have two, and my second one I got something like 23 years after my first one. Um, but I love the idea of tattoos, and the
Yeah.
reason I got that first tattoo was because there's this monologue in what is a play called? Talking with dot 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 by Jane Martin, which is a pseudonym. But it's a series, the whole play is a series of monologues. And there's one monologue in it where there's a woman who's completely covered in tattoos and
I
she's wearing
love
like this
that.
evening gown. And
Oh,
oh,
wait,
did my,
Eunice,
yes,
I think, oh,
there I
yes,
am.
okay.
My,
Wait,
sorry, this,
I mean, it's a pretty
no.
picture.
Okay, my camera has been a little cranky lately
I
and
mean,
has
if it is
decided,
only your voice for a while, that's fine too. We can just keep talking and keep fiddling with the camera.
but why is it, see, it's always come back before. No. Oh, how frustrating.
I'll fill in while you're doing that. Kim says my tattoo gave me a feeling of taking ownership of my body, a story only I can tell. That is exactly how I felt, Kim. I want another one, and you know what? On this call, I've just made a decision. I'm going to give myself a new tattoo for Christmas, and I'm going to do one every Christmas for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh, that's
I've just
amazing.
decided because I've always envied people with those gorgeous, like full tattoos, and I really want another one. It does, it's like we're our own masterpiece
Yeah.
and we're kind of like painting ourselves. I like it. I'm gonna do that.
Oh, why is this happening?
I mean, worst comes to worst, we
Hmm.
can do it with a picture and just have a
Right.
conversation. I can put a little note on the bottom.
Oh, this is very frustrating. All right. Well, let's ignore it for a while
Okay,
and I'll try again.
okay.
Um, but I
So
was
you,
saying this monologue was about this woman who had led an incredibly boring life until, in her 20s or something. And then she, um, well, I won't recap the whole monologue, but basically the gist of it was she got a scar on her face and realized at that moment that people started looking at her differently with interest because they wanted to know her story.
Yeah.
And then she realized that a tattoo is just a scar, right? It's a scar that you turn into a piece of work, a piece of art. And so she started getting tattoos commemorating everything in her life that affected her. And
I'm gonna get more tattoos because I've always been that way. I've got a massive scar on my knee and I'm so proud of it. I think that like our stories are our stories, like the big things we had. I love that. Okay, you've inspired me. Um, yeah, that's
next year,
brilliant.
Daniela will be covered in tattoos.
Well, no, I'm gonna get one I've decided I'm gonna get one every Christmas for myself for the rest of my life. And
That's
I'm
amazing.
representing whatever happened that year,
Mm-hmm.
the best things that happened that year. I love that. Yeah, very cool. So, okay. So it keeps blinking.
I know, I keep trying it.
I mean, or even if we had a headshot of you and could stick that up instead.
Yeah. Ah, so
Barbara says she had
frustrating.
one tattoo, a feminine moon with 3 stars depicting me as a Grammy and my 3 granddaughters. Oh, Grammy as in grandmother, huh? I thought Grammy as in the award.
Uh.
It, do you know what would be good? If everyone turn your camera off now if you don't like it. You know what I could do though, Eunice? I can put it on the other view so that everyone's pictures show up. And then that way it'll just be all of us talking to each other, so it won't be so distracting.
Oh,
Even
yeah,
though
let's
nobody
try
else will
that.
be talking but you and I.
Let's try it.
Okay. So everyone turn your camera off if you don't want the whole world to see you in recording. And we will edit this bit out. Okay, wonderful. Okay. You still there, Eunice?
I am.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so we've covered tattoos, we've covered Juilliard, and it's a big reminder to me because when I hear Juilliard, I am like, I mentioned jealousy earlier. It's like a good jealousy. Like I love seeing things where people have done things that spark something in you and you wish you'd had it or done it because there's always a way to, I think it's signposts to what you would like to do next. And but Juilliard, even just the word, even just the name, and here you were in hell for a whole year of it, and I'm picturing you running around with cute outfits, like, and all your drama-y friends and drinking black coffee and smoking clove cigarettes and having the time of your life. You know what I mean?
I do. Yep. No, it was nothing like that.
So, Barbara actually has the first quirky question, and it's kind of prescient. It touches on what I wanted to ask you because of your website. Because I was told, you know, I maybe put a little bit too much of my personality in my website, and I always worry about that because I've seen people look at it and be horrified. And, just the facts, ma'am. But your website has a lot of quotes, and each one makes me want to like go get the book. And Barbara says, "Do you have a favorite quote? If yes, what is it?"
Oh, I think it's the one that I put at the top of my website, which, so I don't mangle it, I'm going to pull up right now. It's a quote by Jeanette Winterson from her book Written on the Body, and it is, "The physical memory blunders through the doors the mind has tried to seal."
Ooh, oh, that's a powerful one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous novel. And it encapsulates for me so much of what I have tried to achieve as an actor or as an artist or as a human being for that matter. Um, there's so much truth stuck in our bodies, and our mind can try to override it, and it does try. But ultimately, the body is, I think the body has way more intelligence ultimately than the brain. And if the brain tries to shut things out, the body is either not going to let that happen or it's going to get very sick.
I'll tell you
That's
what,
something.
that's true. I can tell you that's 100% true, because your mind can be a steel clamp. I lived on determination through like a lot of like illness. I just kept getting sicker and sicker.
mm,
While I was in a bad situation. But the last few years I fell and I'd fractured about 50 bones. I just kept falling
oh my
badly.
gosh.
And since leaving that situation, it was a bad work situation. Since leaving that situation, I've only fallen once, and that wasn't my fault. That was it. And it was years ago.
Mm,
Nobody could, all the tests in the world, nobody could tell me why I kept falling. Nobody
yeah.
could. But it stopped happening the minute my body was trying to stop me,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't listen. I
Yep.
believe that completely. You
Yep.
gotta work in concert with your body, and ignoring it isn't an option, says the girl that still doesn't pay attention. Barbara says, love it. It was the universe telling you that you needed a big change of life. Yeah, I
Hmm.
believe that. And I wonder how, how you're in Juilliard and there's the depression and everything. I wonder if it was a conversation between your body and your mind, and your body not feeling it was able to deal with it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have always thought that it was at least partially due to the fact that as a kid, I was so overly cerebral and intellectual and just lived in my head
Yeah.
all the time. Whereas, the emotional components of life or the physical components of life were really underdeveloped in me as a young kid and a young adolescent. And but there had been all this stuff that I was kind of just not not dealing with. And when it started to come up, my brain freaked out and just didn't know how to process stuff. And um, I think one of the one of the things I'm proudest of in my life is having made that shift from being almost entirely cerebral to being in a healthy, emotional, physical place. And it took
Okay. Teach
decades
me
of
how,
work.
please, because I've never made that shift, and I still suffer acutely health wise because I've never made that shift. I am 100% in my brain. So
Yeah,
could you
I
teach
think a
me? Because
lot
I
of,
envy you with the yoga, and the word envy comes up a lot in this call. I hope you know it's from like a really generous, happy place. To me, envy is a good thing. So tell me how you did it. Tell me how yoga came into your life. Tell me how long it
yeah.
took.
So I actually started with martial arts before yoga, and I started studying martial arts while I was at Juilliard. And I remember, geez, I think it all happened around the same time. It was the summer after that awful year of depression, and I remember being very uh driven to find something physical to do. And I'd always been interested in martial arts and kung fu. My dad
I
studied
did
kung fu
white
and I'd
crane
watch.
kung fu. What kind of kung fu did you do?
It
I
was
did the
it's
Fujin
called
white crane.
Yeah, it's called Wu Mei Kung Fu, which is
Oh,
uh it's not as well known. It's sort of the precursor to the style that Bruce Lee uses, Wing Chun, but Wu Mei was Wing Chun's teacher.
wow.
So, and here's another super cool story. So Wu Mei was a woman, and she was the daughter, I'm going to get these historical facts wrong, I'm sure. She was the daughter of an imperial general. So she grew up, knowing the sort of imperial military training, but then became a Buddhist nun and developed her own style of fighting based on the fact that she was female and smaller and less muscular than a lot of her opponents.
I think
And
I've heard of
so
this.
so her style of fighting is all about alignment, and it's about putting yourself in relation to the ground and your opponent in such a way that, like, say, if they push on you, the angle of your body is such that they're pushing down into the ground, which they cannot move, you know?
Right.
And so if your body is aligned correctly and your bones are stacked, then they can push all they want. They can't push the ground, do you know?
Yeah.
And so I started studying that summer after I came out of my depression. And I sort of knew instinctively that I wanted to do something really physical. So I studied martial arts for like 10 years off and on. And then overlapping that, I also started doing yoga. Um, and it's funny because the yoga that I practice has a lot of the same components as the martial arts that I studied. So it's all about like core, um, not just
Strength.
core work, as in like get a flat stomach, but the the center of your power comes from your core, like just a couple inches under your belly button, kind of the dantian, which is what you call it in Wumei. That's where everything generates from, either in kung fu or in yoga. And in the yoga, it's also about alignment, right? Or else you get injured. So for me, getting getting in touch with my body just had had to do with doing the martial arts, doing the yoga, and becoming aware of what was happening um, as I was breathing. The breath is a huge component, and the breath and emotions are also really closely connected. So I always tell my acting students that when your emotions change, your breathing changes, and vice versa. So if you deliberately change your breathing and you breathe like someone who's, I don't know, very scared, it's kind of high and very quick and very shallow, you can start to feel that. And it's the same reason that people say, take some deep breaths when you're upset, because those deep breaths are calming to the nervous system. And so it's this very, very direct link between the physical body and your emotional life. So I
Can I,
think
can
I
I
think the
interject real
body and
quick?
emotions are intertwined.
I don't want to keep interrupting you, but I don't want to lose something you said earlier in the conversation. Um, I wonder, there's two things that came up when you were saying all that. The thing about pushing into the ground and the alignment, and I have heard that about that is it Wu Mei?
Hmm.
I had heard, I think I'd heard that. I don't know why, but it sounds really familiar about the being small and having to work on that. But I'm wondering, so we're talking about the messages the body and the brain give each other. Um, so the message you gave your body, which fed back to your brain, was that there is such incredible strength that pushing on you is like pushing on the ground. I mean, what
Yeah.
a core of confidence. I mean to go through life with that kind of inner strength must be. And then the other thing you made me realize when you're saying all this is that that's exactly what I'm missing completely. I can say it from the other side is alignment, which is why I think I kept falling, which is why
Hmm.
I guarantee if I even try yoga, I will injure myself quite badly. Like any exercise I do at this point, I hurt myself. And I've got a fear now of like falling. Whereas when I was doing the kung fu, when I'd lost a lot of weight. I was doing an extreme amount of exercise, extreme amount. Um, but I remember we did these like running leg lifts. You run and do these like leg lifts back and forth. I can't even imagine doing that with that, but it was the physical. I've got a point here, I swear. All the physical exercise I was doing, kickboxing, kung fu, trainer, all during that time of my life, I was doing it from my brain. I wasn't doing it from my body.
Hmm.
There was no communication with my body. I was just forcing it to do what I wanted it to do, including starving and dieting. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that could be why there were so many injuries.
Yeah, that
Like,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, like
Um, I
alignment.
also, yeah, and there are so many metaphors that you can take from whatever kind of physical exercise or, mind body disciplines you want to do that carry over into the rest of your life. So, like, I don't do martial arts anymore, although I still love it. I mainly do yoga, and there are so many metaphors in yoga that you literally apply them on the mat, like engage your core, right? If you feel like you're off balance, what do? You engage your core and you
Mm,
hold on to yourself to keep from falling over. And
I
physically, what
love
that
that.
means is you tighten the muscles in your lower belly, right? But if you take that idea and you apply it to your life in
And your
general, if you
career.
feel out of balance, if you feel like you're gonna fall over, then you go back to your center and you hold on to it for dear life, right? You hold on to yourself. And that's a really powerful idea because it's all inside you. It's not about like you got to find something outside of you to hold on to give you balance. It's like if you know how to use your own body properly, you can find that balance without touching anything else.
And that comes to, the whole social media thing. That even goes down, that touches every single thing in life. It's such a profound truth. If you look at people, the whole thing with work, and people say they're off kilter, they're afraid, they need, are they going to make it? Most of the time you look and they're on social media all the time. They're scrambling to do promo. They're looking from the outside in, trying to get validation. Maybe step back and think about who are you as a
Yeah.
whole, not just trying to get work. Am I good enough? Am I not? Because actors, I do not find that actors, we can narrow our whole existence down to, am I any good and am I going to make it?
Oh, completely. I mean, a funny thing about that is that I stayed with my same therapist from Juilliard for a year or two after I graduated, and he always knew when I had closed a show because I would call him and I was out of work. And he would
Yep,
be like, yeah, you're out of work, aren't you? Like, yes, I just closed a show a week ago and I don't know what to do with myself.
yep, yep. Because we identify, and but that but and also that's the other thing about being an actor. You do identify, you get to feel and live in the place of like these characters.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, and it's the same with books. And then I'll never forget the book where the woman went slow, my character went slowly crazy and was completely paranoid. And I was a completely paranoid cow for like a week. And it seemed perfectly normal to me.
Yep.
But I mean, I know that sounds precious, but it really is true, because then after the play's over, who are we?
Yeah.
You
Oh, I
know,
don't think it's precious. I mean, part of our job is to empathize with our characters and truly like imagine what it's like to be them.
yeah.
And if you're staying distant from that, then I don't think you're really doing what you should as an actor. But the thing is, when you do it, then you're so close to that person, that character, or those characters. And it does bleed into your own life a little bit.
Yeah. I'm thinking about all the female psycho killers
I know, you especially.
that I've been narrating.
I know.
So, okay, so how did it look like if you're a person that's mostly brain centered, right? And you're starting to have conversations with your body and you're starting to um, get into the martial arts and everything. How did you make the leap that I think I'm acknowledging right now that I've never made because I still try to think my way through things and force them? How did you make that leap? How did you learn to listen to your body? How gradual was it? I mean, how did that
Yeah,
happen?
it was very gradual. I mean, I would say it started while I was a drama student and continued for decades. And it was really gradual. That was not something that I was one day like, oh, well, a switch just flipped. It was, I think it was really about, um, I mean, continuing to practice, whatever martial arts or yoga I was doing. I also did circus aerials for a while. Um,
Very cool.
but a lot of it was, I'm trying to think. I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but a lot of it for me was just kind of living life and gathering life experience and letting things impact me, like just sort of allowing that to happen rather than guarding against it.
Did
Um,
yoga teach you that?
yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think it had a lot to do with it. Um, and also, I was continually sort of giving myself opportunities to do that with each play that I did. Like each play would bring its own challenges, and I would have to kind of adjust to opening myself to the situation of whatever character it was. So that, I mean, having kids was very helpful in that sense to me. And you asked earlier about hard, like difficult times. And in a sense, when my kids were born, that was a difficult time for me as an artist because I didn't do any acting for 7 years. And that was really, really hard. It was entirely my choice, and I wouldn't have made a different choice. Um, but there was a part of me that was like starved for air.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was very, very hard, especially because it wasn't a choice that I regretted. And it wasn't like, oh, I could just change this and choose this instead, because I had chosen what I thought was most important and still think is most important. But on the other hand, that meant that I had to sacrifice, you know, a section of me because I could either be at home with my kids or I could be like in Minneapolis doing a show for 3 months.
Yep. Because everything we choose, there's a loss. We can
Right.
acknowledge it or not, but there's always a loss. And I think as humans, we always want to be that there isn't a loss. We always want it to be that this was the right choice. Well, it can be 100% the right choice, but you still could have 100% have lost another choice that was right.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
maybe being human is coming to terms with the fact, coming to terms with all the lives that we choose not to live. They're not going to haunt
Completely.
us.
Yep.
No.
Yep. And I found it's so not binary, it's so not black and white
Yeah.
because yes, I gave up acting for 7 years when my kids were younger, but on the other hand, having had kids expanded my emotional palette by like
Yeah.
3,000%. And so on the other end of that time, I was a far better actor than I
Yeah.
was when I started, And it had nothing to do with training or experience. I mean, like theater experience. It was just life,
Yeah, you put
kind of
yourself
bubbling
in the
around. And
headlights of that fast oncoming truck, and you said, "This is it, life." And see, that's the other thing is, yes, we've lost the reality of, that other choice, but no, none of us, I don't care what position you're in, if we've ever watched a time travel movie, you don't want to lose the things you would lose by going
yeah,
back and making the other choice, do you? Because you wouldn't
yeah,
be you. You would not. What is this? It's a meme. I get all my best stuff from memes. This is so sad. But it's that I realized that if I undid all the mistakes in my life and the bad things that happened, I would have erased myself.
yeah. I agree with that 1,000%. Yeah. And then you look back with, the perspective of hindsight and you realize what you thought was not so great at the time actually turned out to be a
Yeah.
fantastic thing. And
Yeah.
like you said, leads directly to who you are now, something you would not give up in 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've been bragging on 250 calls about my brain tumor. It's the coolest thing that ever happened to me. But nobody wants to hear about it. They get all weird and start talking to me like I'm
Yeah,
stupid. They didn't take
yeah,
out my brain. It was an exciting adventure. You know,
right.
you
Yeah,
gotta. It's like the scars and the tattoos, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
it
our
really is.
markings.
Yep. And
Yeah,
if you have no markings, I mean like metaphorically, then you're just boring.
yeah, yeah. You really are. Even not metaphorically. If you have no markings, you're just a lovely piece of, you're just not interesting yet.
Yeah, and that's not to say that, you have to go out and be traumatized to be interesting. That's
No,
not what I'm
no,
saying.
but just get a
Um,
couple of bumps and scrapes would be nice.
yeah, but also like just letting life, like I was saying, letting life impact you.
Yeah,
You know, taking things in, allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. And this is another quote that I heard somewhere and I have not been able to find it anywhere. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but it's something like freedom comes from allowing yourself to feel everything. And, that's like emotional freedom, obviously. Uh, but this sense of, let the stuff in and then let it move through you and let it move out. Because it's when you don't allow yourself to feel it, but it hits you anyway and you just sort of stuff it into the attic,
yeah.
then that's not a healthy place to be.
Or all the things you do to fix it, like alcohol, food. I mean, it's
Hmm.
that whole open the
Shopping or
refrigerator,
gambling or whatever.
the solution to your problem is not in the refrigerator at 11 o'clock at night, is it?
Right.
It's
Right.
it's letting everything, you're right, because it's like shame. It's it's like shame. Shame can only hurt you if you try to fight it. If you Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
If you just say the thing out loud, the shame goes away.
Yeah. It loses its power
Yeah, I always think if I
once
was
you,
blackmailed, I would just like go and tell the world the thing they were trying to blackmail me about anyway.
yeah, exactly. It is kind of like that. Um, yeah, and all of this to say, like, I have not cracked the code of allowing myself to feel everything by any means. It's just the thing that I kind of hold as that's what I want to, that's what I aspire to, right? I'd probably be Buddha if I actually achieved it, but that is, I'm so much farther along towards it than I was when I was 17, say, or
Yeah.
18. And that's just been a very gradual kind of evolution.
And it's also probably a blessing for your kids having a parent that understands that and then thus allows
Yeah.
them to have their feelings when they're children.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think
So
so.
we've dissected the entire meaning of the world, but let me put in another quirky question here. Barbara says, if you were placed in a witness protection program, what would you choose as your occupation and what would be your new name?
Huh. Wait, so the witness protection program, does that mean I could do anything, like even if it was illegal? Just like I'm trying to figure out the beginning of that question. Does that put the question into a different kind of frame?
Well, for the purposes of this call and because it'll be more fun, who cares if it's legal? Anything
Um,
in the world, what would you choose? You're in hiding. You have to be a whole new person so nobody will ever find you again.
oh, I see, I get it. I get it now. Um, hmm. Does this mean I still have the same set of skills and capabilities that I currently have?
You really are in your head. You're more than me.
Ah, because I'd
Bar-
say astronaut, but I would die in space if I had to make like the first calculation. So I can't say astronaut. And I
yeah,
also
see,
can't say
that's the
like
difference. I would say astronaut and just like, oh, well, I'll fake it.
okay, so I would say astronaut or like deep sea marine biologist, either direction, way out or way in.
And what would be your new name?
Oh God. Um, hmm. I've always liked the name Anya because I played Anya in the Cherry Orchard when I was at Juilliard. Um, I also like the name Diana because of Wonder Woman. Um, and oh, but this is tough. See, I was gonna say those names don't go together. I was gonna say for a
Barbara,
last
she's
name,
going to make
maybe,
those witness protection people work for their money.
yeah, yeah. So I was gonna say for a last name, like maybe Adama, like from Battlestar Galactica, but that doesn't work with either Anya or Diana. So I don't know. I'd have to think about this.
Ask, how long did it take you to settle on your tattoo? If you get another
Um,
one, what would you get?
oh, hmm. I don't know. I feel like I want to get tattoos that commemorate sort of big uh like realizations in my life.
Yeah, like epiphanies, huh?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
want one on the back
exactly.
of my neck.
Yeah. You know what? I've always loved those tattoos. They're not that uncommon where people get wings tattooed on their shoulder blades. I've always thought that was super cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That is. Do you know that mine is completely meaningless on purpose? I went to a Chinese dictionary and I got Chinese lettering because I thought it looked really cool. And I really wanted to force myself to get a tattoo. But I'd spent like 6 years changing my mind about what to have because I wanted it to be meaningful. So I just wrote out a bunch of random words in Chinese lettering and went and got that because I figured that if it didn't mean anything, I couldn't outgrow it.
Mm-hmm.
And it
But what are
worked.
the words? What are the words though?
Well, I think the guy at the Chinese takeout downstairs, I was living in the Channel Islands at the time, he didn't seem impressed. I can't remember what he said it meant, but I don't think it was very nice. So he he wasn't very impressed. I don't think it was even properly meaning anything, but what it could have meant, he wasn't impressed by. I
Love
can't
that.
remember.
So so I have to say, like sometimes when you go into tattoo parlors and they have the flash designs on the wall and you can point to one and be like, I want that. I do know that I saw one once, and I don't read Chinese. I'm not fluent in Chinese, but I do know some characters. And there was one that was a Chinese character, and underneath was the translation, which said light. but actually it said flashlight.
But you see,
So,
that's the beauty. I purposefully, the meaning to me was marking my body
hmm
because I wanted to. Do you see what I'm saying? It was the
yeah,
the action, it was the bravery and the action to do it for myself. No, nobody else would ever see it or care or know. And that was the point, because it didn't matter what it actually said, because it wasn't for others to view. It was for
yeah,
me to think it looked pretty. And
yeah.
it sounds weird, but I also, because I'm such a Gemini, I would literally regret it 3 days later and grow out of it. Something I think is gorgeous today. I am not, put it this way, I'm not one of those people that buys a coat for life.
Well, it's funny because my tattoos face me. So when I hold my arm up, they're right side up. Whereas when I got my first tattoo, the girl who did it was like, yeah, but when you're walking down the street, it'll be upside down to people. And I said, it's not for them. It's for me,
Yeah,
right? I don't care if it's upside down to them.
yes.
They
That
don't have
I
to see it.
I think that's the important part. Um,
Yeah.
what's your favorite genre? Jonathan wants to know.
To narrate or to like to read for fun or both.
Jonathan, to narrate or to read for fun? Or both? Just do both, and then we'll cover all avenues. I mean, I've got a final
So
question.
to narrate, I think I have a couple that I really like narrating. I love narrating um, mystery, literary fiction, and well-written nonfiction, especially if it has like a narrative, like a sort of story. Um, I think those are my three favorites to narrate: mystery, literary fiction, and nonfiction.
So if you,
Good
but
nonfiction.
before reading, what about if you're going to binge on TV late at night and you just need to relax?
You know, I'm not a big TV watcher. I have huge, huge holes in my TV knowledge. Um, but I'll tell you some of my favorite shows, uh, which will probably age me. Um, I'll watch Star Trek: The Next Generation till the end of time. And uh, like I said, Battlestar Galactica. I like a lot of sci-fi, although I actually don't enjoy narrating or reading it that much. I also love shows like Slings and Arrows. Does anyone know that? It's a Canadian series about this Canadian theater company that's based on Stratford. They claim it isn't based on Stratford, but come on. The name of the company is called Saint Ratford. Um, and and what else? Oh, and oh, what is that show with Gabriel Byrne? It's about a therapist in therapy. No, that can't be right. In therapy? It's that great show with Gabriel Byrne as the psychotherapist.
Huh,
Anyway,
I've missed it.
yeah, it's really good.
And then
Really
reading.
good
Isn't
acting.
it weird how the genres we watch and read and narrate are all different sometimes? What's your favorite
Yeah.
genre to read?
Well, you know, I'm a sucker for great performances. So if
Mm,
something's got a great performance in it, I
mm,
will happily watch it. It
yeah.
doesn't matter what genre. Um, and kind of the same thing for when I listen to audiobooks. If it's a great performance, I'm in, you
Yeah.
know. So it's less from me about genres than about the performances.
I love that. Okay, final question. I hit everyone with this.
Oh, in
Um,
treatment, that's right.
oh, In Treatment. I'll check it out. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
heard of it.
I was like, in
I'll check it out.
therapy?
Okay, Eunice, for the YouTube audience that's going to be watching this in the next 100, 120 years, if they took one thing away from this show, if you could leave them with one thought or a piece of advice, what would it be?
I've watched your show before, so I knew this was coming, and yet I
Everyone
didn't
says that, but they
prepare
never know what to
anything.
say.
I didn't prepare anything because I couldn't think of anything. Um, I have I have two things. One is all leaf blowers should be dismantled and banned in perpetuity.
Oh, you know your audience. You know how to pick a room.
I do. I mean, just because we have a piece of equipment doesn't mean we should use it. Same goes for like the nuclear bomb.
And
Um,
construction workers, I literally, after a big bout of construction, literally stomped out to them and said, I have spent the last month planning different ways to kill you. I did have a moment where I thought maybe this isn't the right audience for that. But yeah,
ugh,
they were not happy. But yeah, I get
uh,
that one. All leaf
yeah,
blowers should be.
and then the big, like the big deep one, maybe
Yes.
is from Our Town, which is one of my favorite plays.
Oh,
Um, and again, this is not something I have by any means mastered myself, but this idea of trying to realize life while you're living it, to realize every moment. And it's impossible, right? You can't you can't fully feel the miracle of existence every single second. But you can try, or you can remind yourself after you've let, you know, a couple months go by without realizing it to maybe just stop and and just realize that you're alive and how amazing it is.
I love that. I love that. I think that's going to be the title of this show, except I'm very tempted to make the leaf blower thing the title. Eunice, this has been, I knew you would be a fabulous guest, and you definitely didn't disappoint. Um, I'm a massive, massive fan, and I'm gonna like go and like read your website for pleasure. You've got so many cool things on it. It's the first website I've ever seen where I just want to like hang out and read the website for the fun of it. So thank you so much for joining us. It was
Thank
a
you.
piece of heaven. You guys, thank you everyone for joining and for filling our screen with your gorgeousness. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everyone. I'm sorry my camera crapped out.
It's fine. We saw you in the beginning, so
Yes.
it's all good. It's all good. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Daniela.
Bye. Thanks, Eunice. Bye, everyone.